Now, in our first segment this morning, the Mayor of Freetown, Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr, is here in the studios to talk about her plans in revenue mobilization, sanitation, flood mitigation, her council's citywide community engagement, among other things. Good morning, Madam Mayor.
Good morning, Elizabeth. Good morning, Victor. Good morning, viewers.
It's a pleasure to have you in the studios again.
Thank you.
Now, briefly take us through. You're actually running your second term in office. And you started last year. We're here in a new year. How far have you come? And briefly remind us on what mandate this time around you're running on.
Thanks very much. Well, I guess by mandate you mean what was my campaign promise?
Please.
5 more to do more. So building on Transform Freetown, which was the development plan for 2018 to 2022, effectively. We're there in 2023. And right now, we're going through the community engagement. Well, we actually just finished the community engagement process. So my first term, Transform Freetown, everybody got to hear about it. We focused on 19 targets. A lot of work was done with sanitation, with climate action, with working in schools with our school support programs, and so on. Right now, I suppose we'd like to talk about where we're going. Mm-hmm. And for this second term, we've got an overarching goal. And we're building on Transform Freetown. So the name of the plan is Transform Freetown, Transforming Lives. And the Transforming Lives elements really addresses the fact that 70% of our youth are unemployed or underemployed. And at the same time, 70% of our population are youth. And of course, 51% are women. So we have an overarching target this time. As the mayor, my commitment this time around, my target, which I know we'll have to implement with the help of everybody. We're always very, very collaborative. But the target is to create 120,000 jobs, dignified jobs for women and youth by 2028. So to do this, we're focusing on 4 clusters: climate action, heritage tourism, the digital economy, and human development. And of course, like I said, collaboration is key. So over the last week, from Monday of the previous week to Saturday just gone by, the 18th, so Monday the 13th to Saturday the 18th, we've been in communities. We've engaged 4,800 residents of Freetown. It's been fantastic. We had 48. So we're engaging them on the plan, on the framework of the plan. So like I said, there are 4 clusters, but 11 critical pathways. And for the purpose of communities, we have highlighted the human development elements, so access to water, access to health, access to education, obviously within the mandate of council. So we're not GUMA, we're not the Ministry of Health, but within our mandate, we have the responsibility to seek the welfare of residents. So we will advocate, we will work in the ways that we can. For health, for example, we have a relationship or a role with the PHUs, the primary healthcare units, which are the ones in the communities, the ones closest to people. With education, we have a role. We don't have big budgets, but we have a role with the primary schools, the primary to JSS, and increasingly we're focusing on early child development. And of course, even though there's no spoken mandate, we have an obligation which we take on to ensure that we're also addressing skills development. So what we presented to communities were, those 4: health, water, education, but also urban farming. In my last administration, we noticed that there was a lot we could do with urban farming, and we supported 500 women. We really want to amplify that and accelerate that. The other 4 critical pathways that we shared with communities were tree planting. You remember that in my first term, we had the goal of planting 1 million trees. We planted 977,000, and we're starting planting again on the 16th of June. So we're going to cross the 1 million mark by the end of June. But the reason we mentioned tree planting is because not only is it beneficial for communities in terms of preventing landslides, preventing flooding. It also directly provides jobs. We have over 1,500 young people who were employed under Freetown, the Tree Town, as trackers, growers, monitors. So we talk to communities about tree planting. We talk to them about access to finance. If we're interested in creating jobs, people have to have access to finance. So we presented that to them. And then we also said, well, we know that 35% of the population of Freetown live in informal settlements. It's important for us to do upgrades. You cannot move 350,000 people and say you're relocating to where? In Freetown. But what you can do is to use the slogan of the Slum Dwellers Association, which is, don't take the people out of the slum, take the slum out of the people. To take the slum out of the people, you must improve the environment. And so we talked to them about drainage, improved access to electricity, and then the eighth one, sanitation. So with those 8, across those 48 communities, targeting 100 people per community, women, youth, the elderly, political leaders, traditional leaders, we gave them, Freetonians, the opportunity to rank for us their top priorities. And I wonder if you can guess what came up as number 1. Elizabeth, Victor, what do you think would come up as number 1 across the 8 that I just mentioned?
Well, it's a matter of priority.
No. What do you think Freetonians highlighted as their number 1 priority? Just guess. Water, sanitation, health, education, access to finance, tree planting, upgrades of community drainage, and I've on the last one, but
sanitation.
Sanitation.
Sanitation. That's, you both said sanitation. It was water.
Water. Okay.
Access to water came up. 51% of the residents that we spoke to said access to water was their number 1 priority, and then that was followed.
Yes, I'm a bit concerned. Don't you think you're swerved a bit out of your jurisdiction? I mean,
well, so Guma is responsible for providing water.
Yes.
We are responsible for the welfare of the communities. When we meet with communities, we ask them, what matters to you? Who delivers it is not the question. What the question is, what matters most to you?
Okay.
And the other thing that we need to know is, because of the relationship between Guma and Freetonians, the mayor of Freetown, whether it's Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr or Buddy Gibson or Herbert Williams, whoever is the mayor sits on the board of Guma. Because water is life. It's so important. And you can't, so there has to be the relationship, and there is that relationship. But the other thing is that Guma's supplies don't go everywhere in the city. So you would see that even now as I speak to you, Freetown City Council is in the process with funding from the Swiss Development Corporation through UNCDF. We're in the process of building 65 boreholes across the city right now as I speak to you. They'll be completed by the end of June. That will give access to thousands of people who don't have access to water. So the number 1 question was, or the primary question is, what matters? The second that came out of that, hazard a guess? You're going to be surprised, it's not sanitation. I'll tell you. The second that came out of that is upgrades to informal settlements, particularly drainage. And again, that's drainage in the city is SLRA, you know? But there are many communities that have no drainage, and we will be working not only in collaboration with SLRA, but in collaboration with communities to address those concerns. So the third is education and access to skills. So we're going to now take this information that's come from the mouths of our residents and move into the second phase of our planning process. Because when we did Transform Freetown, we spoke then to 15,000 residents and then to 600 professionals. Now we've got a bit of a blueprint. Transform Freetown, we got a lot of data, we've done a lot of interventions. We actually have a lot of projects like this one, where we're doing 65 boreholes as we speak, that are already underway. So we haven't chosen this time to speak to that number of people. But we've got a really good sample with 4,800. What's next?
Before you go into the planning process for another phase, I'd like to say that some of the projects are really ambitious, but what results have we seen with regards maybe the first phase of your planning? Have you gone into implementation? What are the results that are out there?
Oh, there are many. Let me just give you one which it shows that when you succeed sometimes, the demand for your success grows even higher. Elizabeth, I don't know if you were aware that over these years, when you flush your toilet, and this is very important, sometimes people don't understand the importance of some of the things which actually lead to disease, water pollution, etc. in our city. But have you ever asked yourself the question, when I flush my toilet and it goes into a cesspit, what happens to it afterwards? I'm sure many people don't ask that question because it just doesn't cross your mind. But what used to happen is that it would go to a cesspit, and we had a very small number of vacuum truck operators, the guys who come and suck it out, and then they would take it to King Tom, and they would literally, until I be brought in, this is one example, and I've already given you the example of the trees and the growth of the trees and the number of jobs that created, but just on this fecal sludge, it used to just go and be emptied in King Tom, and it would just be there. Just think of it, picture it for a minute. Can you imagine the health consequences of that? Not only for the communities around, but even for the water table, as that stuff would seep down. And studies were shown, were done about 3 or 4 years ago that showed that there's so much E. coli in our water, mainly coming from feces. One of the things I'm really proud of that we accomplished under Transform Freetown was the building of our first ever wastewater treatment plant. So now in King Tom, we have a treatment plant. The vacuum trucks, and we also put more vacuum trucks into circulation. We were able to acquire 3 vacuum trucks, which we leased to private operators. We didn't try to do it ourselves. And with that, we now have a plant where what comes from toilets is treated. It's not only treated, we are also able now to convert it to briquettes and compost. Why did I say success leads to even more demand? Because on Friday, we had the Association of Vacuum Truck Operators in our office saying, we need you to work 24 hours a day. Currently, the plant closes at 6, but there's so much demand because people now have a healthier approach. So not only are we going to increase the hours, but we've also in the process of securing funding to expand that plant and to build one in the east end of Freetown. That's a phenomenal change. That's going from 0 treatment to currently treating about 35% to 40% of liquid waste in the city. And now we're on course to take that even further. It also creates jobs, it improves lives, and it keeps our society and our communities healthy. That's just one example. And we could go on about our improvements in sanitation. We could go on about the construction, the Wilberforce Market, the nursery in the Congo Water Market. We could talk about the money that we raise to ensure that we now have a postgraduate gynecology program, which means we have more gynecologists training. And we did that. You'll say, but that's not your mandate. We did that because collectively, when we sat together last year, in 2018, we agreed that reducing maternal mortality was one of the most important things to do for health. We also agreed that improving awareness of 5 non-communicable diseases, hypertension, diabetes, sexual, reproductive cancers, substance abuse, and mental health were really important, and we made those a target as well. And now in the markets, in 6 markets, we've been running a campaign to improve people's awareness of hypertension and to reduce the consumption of sodium. That Maggi cube we already put now with food, it really is a driver of high blood pressure. So there's so many things, but to make it easy, fcc.gov.sl, all our reports are there.
Okay.
And the glamorous things that everybody sees, the things that are hidden are also there. So that's kind of speaking to your question of what's been done.
Okay.
So, Madam Mayor, let's start discussing the issues, I mean, one after the other. Given the concerning rate at which the city is being attacked by record-breaking heat at the moment, it would only be logical for you to give us like an update on how these trees have grown. How far have they gone?
Okay, so when you plant a tree, it has a growth period. We plant them as seedlings. So you'll find that the ones that we've planted over the years, the first major planting was done in 2020. So those trees are now 4 years old. Some of them are taller than me, depending on the species. So the species that is known as...
Which area? Which areas are these?
Oh, so we've got 13 catchment areas for planting. And Kamayama, Mainkine, tree planting, botanical gardens, right behind here as well. As we speak to you, we're in Wesley Street, which is where the AYV Studios is. If you come, as you come down from AYV on the left, you have a Guma. We've got over 1,500 trees in there. And I visited that a year and a half ago, and at the time, some of them were taller than me. Obviously, some of them weren't. Depends on the species of the tree. But what's really important, we haven't planted in one place. We've planted across planting sites. But what we can do for Freetonians who'd like to see is we have a tree tracker app, and that the URL is...
Does it work?
Of course it does. Why would it not? Have you tried it? You can try it now on your phone. Let me just give you the URL. Why would... That's a funny question. Why would you ask that? Well, have you tried to look for it and you didn't succeed?
Not really.
Oh, good. Fine. So let me just give you the URL now.
Okay. Well, while
so the tree tracker app is... The link is freetown.treetracker.org.
And if you click on that link, it will
takes
tell you
you
exactly
to
how far the tree has gone?
Yes, because what it does is, every tree, when it's planted, it has a tag, a unique identifier tag.
Okay.
So the person who's planting it takes a picture of the planting, because it's a seedling. So you know a seedling is about this high. You plant it, you take a picture.
Okay.
What the growers and the monitors do is on a regular basis, they take... their responsibility is to water in the dry season. It's also to clear away leaves, debris, things that could prevent the growth of the tree. And on a regular basis, we're doing a verification process right now. On a regular basis, they take a picture of the tree and they upload it into the app. So when you go to the app, you'll see first Sierra Leone. Then you'll see things that look like teardrops. And they will show you all the locations of where we've planted. As you zoom in, you're zooming in to the individual trees. It will show you who the grower is. The picture of the grower will be there. It will tell you the species. It will tell you the last time it was updated. And it clearly gives you the location because it's a geolocation. Are these people being paid? They're being paid. They're being paid. It depends. So the payment of the growers has been linked to different projects. So the initial planting in 2020 was funded by a World Bank project called Russell P. So they were paid by Russell P through that project, which is now ended. They've now moved on to a new project, PSSNYE, which is also World Bank funding. It's a public, I don't know what public PSSNYE stands for, but it's basically public cash for work. It's a public social safety net, that's right. Public social safety net. And so they're being paid under that project. And the next phase of their work, the planting that is being done from the 16th, is also linked to that project. The Russell P project for growers is being extended. And where we're going to get to, because we can't just depend on World Bank projects to continuously fund this. Where we're getting to now, many people would have heard about the Bloomberg prize that we won in 2021. That prize is only now being operationalized. It's only now that the funding is coming through, because there was a lot of a lot of bureaucracy that needed to go through. It was $1 million, and that $1 million is now being used to fund the sustainability project. And just to clarify, for Freetonians who get this confused, or for people who want to be confusing, just to clarify, when Bloomberg awards $1 million prize to us and to 15 other cities, what has taken time is that Bloomberg chooses an implementing partner that supports all 15 cities. So the money doesn't come to us, the money goes to UNDP. Not UNDP in Sierra Leone, UNDP in Germany. Okay. So that team was here in February, I think it was, for an inception meeting. They went to the different sites, they saw the trees. In fact, they're going to be back here on the 13th or 14th of June. Right. And what that money is going to do is build sustainability. Okay. How? Because that tree tracker app that we first had was part of a World Bank funded project. Now we are migrating onto an app and a platform that will be Freetown City Councils, that will be held here. We are also adding more features. But most importantly, under this funding, we are contracting a carbon developer. That is a company that's going to be able to do the verification and registration of our trees, so that those trees can be used for carbon offsets in other countries where people are, they're emitting a lot of carbon. Mm-hmm. So, for example, a company that makes let's do an airline company that's flying everywhere using a lot of jet fuel, which is polluting the environment. In many countries now, they're obligated. If you're producing greenhouse gases, you must offset. You must also support something that is taking those greenhouse gases from the environment. Okay. And the carbon credit market is all about that. All right. So we're using that funding to enter into the carbon credit market and to ensure that there will be funding coming on a sustainable basis so that we can keep on growing more trees and monitoring. I'll just say one last thing. Okay. We planted 1 million trees, almost done with 1 million. Under this Transforming Lives project, we've set a target of 5 million trees.
Okay. So I would like us to discuss, urban planning, which is, I think it's an area where you failed.
Oh, well, I think you need to ask yourself, or first of all, you need to understand if we have a mandate. So before you make a judgment, it will be really helpful. Hold on, Victor.
But I wanted to paint a context.
No, I won't, because you need to know that we don't have an urban planning function. It's not within our mandate. So before you make a judgment, I can tell you categorically, that even though the 2004 Local Government Act devolved land use planning and building permits to councils, it was never enforced. It was never, the devolution never happened.
In essence, you're saying you're not responsible.
Absolutely. So that's not even a secret, because at the moment, so let me tell you the sequence of events. In 2004, devolution, there were 28 functions from central governments that were devolved on paper to councils.
And you do not think urban planning is important, do you?
I think urban planning is very important, but urban planning functions can only be undertaken by the institution that holds the mandate. And as we speak to you now, you're very welcome to double check this, but I can assure you, because I had a meeting with the Minister of Lands just a couple of weeks ago, and there's an ongoing process. Without any equivocation, without any doubt, the urban planning functions in Sierra Leone, you need to understand this before you move forward. So let me just help you. The urban planning functions in Sierra Leone are held by the Ministry of Lands. So once you have that, then you can move on.
What I'm saying is, you see, you have a very big problem as a mayor. Now, year in, year out, our gutters are flooded with silt and dirt chalked into those places. And these darts are coming from the hills.
Absolutely.
And what I'm saying is, you are here as mayor, and people are still building on these hills around
because
bobbing the trees, the forest. And if you take a look at a panoramic view of the city,
absolutely,
you would see most of it is almost 80%, according to the CNN documentary that was done in February. 80% of our forests are being bobbed.
More than that.
And you're mayor.
And guess what? The function, the building permits are not issued by the local councils. They are issued.
Do you romance with these ministries, these line ministries?
You don't romance, you work. You don't romance, you work. But just
interaction in context, I mean. Now, the thing is,
Victor, you need to start. You need to understand. It's very important for you to understand. I would tell you the best practice everywhere in the world. I don't think I've found a city where it is not the function of this local authority to issue building permits and to do land use planning. But there's an exception in Sierra Leone. We have not been allowed to do it.
It's a funny issue.
We have engaged.
And that's why I'm asking you, because
so one of the things that's really important,
shouldn't it?
Well, it does. And if you've been following me, you would know that we've advocated endlessly. There isn't a program that I've done. Even yesterday, I spoke at a climate change conference that was hosted by WHI and SEND, and that was one of my submissions. I've been to see the successive ministers of lands. I have submitted papers. We have advocated through the ministry, through the World Bank, and I'm really pleased. Oh, we advocated.
So are you saying it's the minister of lands that should be blamed here?
I'm not blaming anyone. I'm telling you that let me help you.
Well, you said you've submitted papers.
We have.
It seems as if
we have, because we've submitted this as a request, and this is common knowledge. I'm surprised that you're not aware of this.
Well, so the thing is, I don't see how you do your work in your office, and that's why I'm asking, because I'm sure people
Victor,
might be quite interested.
Your point is, the point that we need to make is a simple one, and let's be constructive as we make it. So urban planning is the management tool of every city council. Because if I'm sitting here, and I've been in this very studio and done an example. I've been in this studio and I've said, if I'm in charge of the city and somebody built here and I don't know about it, and they built here and I don't know about it, and they built here and I don't know about it, and you're just talking about one area, let's talk about parking. People are building multi-story buildings with no parking provision. What do you think is going to happen? I recently went to Mount Oriole. I mentioned Mount Oriole as an example at the conference yesterday. I also discussed it with the minister when we met recently. Mount Oriole is a community. I don't know if you're familiar with Mount Oriole. If you're coming along the hillside bypass, on the right-hand side, if you look up, there's a huge community. It's not even an informal settlement. These are houses, concrete houses. 3- 4-story high. Do you know there's no access to Mount Oriole except through stairs? Which means there's no way for a vehicle to provide sanitation services. There is no access for the vacuum trucks to dislodge.
So you see?
So listen, a local government act has to be, when you have devolution, it needs to be devolved. On the 7th of March, 2019, the Vice President issued a press release. 7th of March 2019, you can look it up. He issued a press release and it said, with immediate effect, all functions that were hitherto not devolved were devolved. The next day, or a couple of days later, the then Minister of Lands went on radio and said, absolutely not. We went back to the drawing board and we were told that there would be a process through which this devolution would happen. It hasn't happened to date. If you check now, there's a World Bank project ongoing, which is doing a review of the Land and Countries Act and looking at planning. And that process, that review, is recommending devolution to the city. In 2019, there was a performance audit done by Audit Services to look at the planning function and building permit function as executed by the Ministry of Lands. The city council cannot issue building permits, cannot stop someone from building.
I never said you should.
No, but you cannot stop someone from building if you are not the one giving the permit.
It seems you're a bit frustrated.
I'm not frustrated at all.
What I'm saying
but
is
I think
you've been chasing these ministers to
it's important
heed
for
to your
you
call,
to understand.
but they've not been paying attention. Is that not what you're saying?
What I'm saying
and
is...
your hands are tied behind your back.
What I'm saying is, very simply, land use planning and building permitting are one of the most important functions in a municipality because the execution of those enables better service delivery.
Okay.
If you plan before you build, then access to water, access to sanitation is easier. When the rains happen, the community in Mount Oriole, because no vehicle can get there, they showed me themselves. They take their garbage and they throw it in the rainwater.
Okay,
that is
Mayor,
not
please
the way
hold
we
on.
want
We'll
sanitation
go for
to be
a
done.
short music break, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go over to our Facebook messages, I'd like to ask you on sanitation. Surprisingly, you know, when you posed the question for us to think what citizens that you engaged with here in Freetown, what was top of their priority, it wasn't sanitation.
It was water.
Yes, it was water. But however, we know coming to the rainy season, which actually exacerbates sanitation issues when we when it's the rainy season. How prepared are we? I want us to look at sanitation physically in terms of even the gutters, you know, because it becomes so clogged. And quite recently we saw, just after a small amount of rain, the streets are all dirty. We have garbage coming out as well. Where are we in terms of sanitation, and what specific plans are in place, especially when we approach the rainy season now? Okay,
thank you so much. And that question has so many angles to it. I'm going to start with the rainy season and the flood mitigation, which I'm so, you know, I look back and I think this is, again, something I'm really proud of. In 2018, when I came into office, I was sworn in May, and in June, for the first time in Freetown, people began to hear flood mitigation. And flood mitigation activities have continued. We started again in Freetown now, and I'm pleased to read out to you, for those of you who are listening viewers, I'm pleased to read out to you that we have already undertaken these activities. Portini Road, where, as you mentioned, after that rain, by the afternoon it was gone. But Portini Road has had extensive cleaning. Texaco, Sanders Street, Blackhall Road to Ashobi Corner, Taylor Street by Old Shell, Sarola Old and New Road, Crew Bay, which was quite an exercise. We were there for about 10 days. Samba Gutter, Crewtown Road by Sanders Street, junction to Adelaide Street, Allentown, Juba Bridge, Amadou Lane to the canal, Bright Street, and the work continues. So we've planned about 80 days of deep cleaning and to ensure that the gutters are unblocked. But you know, the point that Victor was making, the conversation we had just before the break, is also relevant, because it's not just, it's a combination. I gave you the example of Mount Oriole, where the people openly said to me, Mayor, motokano di kanaya, because planning has happened, or rather construction has happened without planning. And so you've got an entire community, and they're not the only ones, which are inaccessible. So when it rains, they literally throw their garbage. So a problem is created, which then needs to be solved downstream, where really the solution should happen at the point of planning. You should plan for access. You should plan for sanitation. So we're then dealing with that. But there was something else which was mentioned, and that's the silt. Because when you deforest, when you cut down trees, it means that the roots of the trees, which would otherwise be holding the soil, aren't there. So when it rains, the topsoil runs off. So one of the classic places that you see this so evidently is the old road in the East End. You will see massive amounts of silt coming down whenever it rains. And so this exercise of desilting, of clearing, is kind of coming after the fact, but really the solution should have been that when these communities were being built, that a planning exercise should have been done to say, no, you can't build here, this is the road. No, you can't build here, this is the drain. Plot them out and sell out plots which already have pre-existing services run in. That's something that we hope the Ministry of Lands will be taking on in the future in terms of their approach. But even better still, you know, we're really excited that there is now a serious conversation going on about devolving. Of course, you could say, some people would say it's too little too late because Freetown is already here, but it's never too late to improve.
Just before we go for the Facebook comments,
I haven't quite finished with my answer to that question, so I'll come back. I'll come back to that one.
So you see, countries like Tanzania, Uganda, South Africa, Kenya, Cameroon, Morocco, Rwanda, and I think Mauritania have already banned plastic to combat, you know, looming environmental pollution and challenges. Now, your mandate includes waste and pollution management, is it not so?
Yes.
No,
it's sanitation.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying I was just thinking about the access,
okay,
and it just says sanitation.
Yes, and that is, and so, you see, don't you think it's high time plastic is banned in Sierra Leone?
So
it's a major problem in our city.
I love the fact that you didn't call out cities. You called out the names of countries. So I agree with you entirely, because this is a national challenge.
It is.
And it's not one that a city can do in isolation. If we were to ban plastic in Freetown, what happens when someone's coming from with plastic from Makeni or Bo? Do we stop them? Do we have a border?
And that's why I'm asking.
So this is definitely, I think, something that I agree with. I'm so glad that you were able to read out those countries. And I'm looking forward to Sierra Leone as a country being added to that list. And that's
Do you think it's something you can champion to Parliament?
I think it's something, no. Unfortunately, we can't go to Parliament. Okay. At the moment, we have a bylaw. We've actually put in a new bylaw on sanitation. Okay. We're strengthening our sanitation laws, but we don't go to Parliament. We send the bylaw to the local government minister. The local government minister sends it to the Attorney General. The Attorney General sends it to Parliament. We don't go to Parliament with our bylaw.
So what can you do?
So what we can do is what we've been doing, which has been to advocate locally,
to advocate
to... Oh, really?
It doesn't seem to be working.
Well, I think there is a Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. So I'm very sure that there's work going on, because we had a meeting with him. We discussed what we see as the challenges. There is a plastic policy under development. There was a conversation in the conference yesterday about the banning of plastic. And the EPA gentleman who was there, representative, if I remember rightly, what he said to me was what he said to the audience, the first step is a plastics policy. But I think what is best, even as you've read out the names of countries, that when it comes to national issues that the city does not have a mandate over, we advocate. I'm a climate champion. I'm a climate action champion. If you look at our clusters, the #1 is climate action. So my advocacy is undisputed. It's constant. But if you have questions of a national nature, it's probably best to engage the national players on those questions and you know, to get those answers. So I just want to quickly come back to Elizabeth and the point on sanitation. So the flood mitigation work is underway. I've just read out a number of sites where we're going. We will be across the city, but I just touched on something which matters. That is the sanitation bylaw. And I'm going to tell you that if we have garbage in the gutters, I often say to Freetonians, all the garbage we see on the streets, it comes from us. Every piece of dirt, every plastic bottle, every cassava leaf tie that you see in a gutter, every old clothing, piece of old clothing that you see has come from someone. And our bylaws, which were written back in 2010 for sanitation, made it a crime for someone to be caught illegally depositing waste. So in the strengthening of the bylaw, we've decided to move one step further up. Comes back to that point I was making even with the urban planning. Rather than deal with the problem when it's happened, prevent the problem from happening.
How effective are these laws?
We haven't, I'll just explain to you that we're in the process of taking a bylaw to Parliament. I know that the minister has now sent it because he copied us. It's now gone to the Attorney General. And I know that the parliamentary committee, because we consulted with them, the sanitation committee, we consulted with them on this before we even sent it to the minister. What the bylaw will do, and you can't say how effective without knowing what it says. What the bylaw will do is that the bylaw will now make it a crime for you not to have an authorized waste provider. So what council is doing within the context of that bylaw is dividing the city into 8 blocks. We already have all of your data as Freetonians, because with the property rate system, we have digitized our property rate. It means we have the Google Plus codes of every house, we have the photo of every house, at least those that were there by 2020. We're getting an updated satellite image for 2024, because obviously houses have been built in the last 4 years since our last image. But what matters is that we are going to revolutionize the way household waste was collected.
Okay, Madam Mayor, hold your thoughts, please. No, it's 9. We'll go for a short break, and
of course,
when we come back, you can go. Yeah, so quickly we'll try to wrap up with the mayor, as we, of course, you have something else to attend to, and we have our second guest already here.
Thank you. So we just said we would just quickly say a couple of things on sanitation before leaving. One is that the bylaw is going through Parliament, and Freetonians, we're going to be really, really strict on that. Everyone's going to be required to have someone collect their garbage. Freetown City Council will be in the front, but we already have a bid out in the public to recruit or to contract service providers across the city. So we're going to make sure, and you need to be prepared, waste costs money. The fuel for the vehicles, the maintenance of the vehicles, the staff collecting it. Throwing your garbage in the gutter is not the solution. The second thing I want to point out is a big shout out to our over 600 sweepers who are doing public space cleaning. I'm sure you're seeing all over the city.
Are they going everywhere?
They're on 180 streets, our main streets. And I'm sure you're seeing the impact that that's having. That's building on the work that we've done previously with our streets, public space sweeping. But I really want us to all remember that it's up to us to keep our city clean. And as the new bylaws come out, and even ahead of the new bylaws, we're really continuing to say to Freetonians, not Ibiu-Dotina Street. And by the way, the street bins that are on the streets, the little yellow ones, and there will be more, we're fabricating more, putting more out. They are not for your household waste. That's for your waste as you walk along the street. So,
Madam Mayor, just before you go briefly.
Yes.
You had said that people should not use or hire the services of Clean Salon any longer. But your trucks cannot access all of these communities. Okay, so that's a really good one. So when we say Clean Salon, just for us to be clear, what we're talking about is the men who have just really come out in huge numbers now, and it's very connected to the Kush pandemic, because it's an easy way for people to collect 10,000 leones here, 5,000 leones here. If you are giving your garbage to somebody who is on foot and is just carrying a bag, I'm sure you know, and I know, that they are not taking it to the authorized dump site. They are moving it, they're taking it from your house and just putting it a few yards down the road and leaving it on the gutter or leaving it on the street. So Freetonians, we have our own civic responsibility. I recently published, and I will continue to publish on our website, you can look, fcc.gov.sl, a list of our approved providers. You may not see a tricycle drive past you, but we have the phone numbers. You can call and request a service. Yes, you can now call them. Is this information out as well for those who wouldn't be able to access your website? So yes, so I think that's a really good point, Elizabeth. Most people are on WhatsApp. We have said, and we will do it actually, and I need to fast track that we will have a sort of FCC WhatsApp group. Of course, that's going to be limited in the number of people who can access it, but it's available within communities. You can ask your counselor, but you make a good point, and I think I'm going to just discuss that with the sanitation team. How can we ensure that those who can't access it on a website, on a Facebook page, will know what these numbers are? Perhaps we should do just read some of them out, take an ad on radio and have the numbers written out. But it will become easier as the new bylaws come on board, because with the new contractors, with the new service providers, they will be going to your homes to ask you to register. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr, Mayor of Freetown.